Anytime you edit your module, Rhino should be closed. You can't edit a module that is currently loaded into Rhino because everything is in read-only mode. And the place to find that tooltip is in this module.cs file. And this file holds a lot of top-level information about your module. It's relatively long by the standards of all the files that were automatically created. It does a fair number of things. We're going to be going through some of them later. But the first thing I want to call your attention to is the part where we set that tooltip. And right here on line 36, there's a line that reads protected override string tab header tooltip, and then there's example module. So let's put something better here. Let's say better occupancy. And that's the only change. We just changed what the tooltip is. And we launch Rhino 7. So let's load our project up. And we'll go to our modules list and hover, and there it says better occupancy. Now it's a real module name the way these other ones are. Another thing I want to point out while we're here has to do with the panel itself. So we saw you can click here to run the example command, and it runs it up here. This is just another Rhino command, this hello UMI example module command, and you can just run it here as if you were just doing that. You can see it shows up in the type ahead list. You can just run it that way, and it does the exact same thing. And in general, when you're doing UMI module development, it's a good idea to think in terms of Rhino commands. And then when you create your panel, have your panel, as much as possible, just invoke those Rhino commands. That isn't always possible to do for everything. Most of the UMI modules don't do that for everything. But when you can, it's good because it gives you a better separation between your user interface and your actual simulation logic. And when your actual simulation logic is complicated, that can be a very, very valuable thing. So we changed the name of our tooltip, but this example command still doesn't have a very good name, right? It's called UMI example module command. That's not custom to our module. Eventually, we want to change the actual logic of this command, but let's start by just changing its name. That's a simple first step. So I'll close Rhino. And to change anything about the command, I need to find its file in the solution. So you'll notice there's a folder called Rhino commands, and this is where the template stored that first command it created on your behalf. So let's open it up. Okay. You can see it's very short. Okay, here's the command, UMI example module command. It's got an English name that is the same thing. And then when you run it, it runs the code in the run method, and all it does is write something to the Rhino console, Rhino app.writeLine. And it says this project has visible buildings, and then this will be filled in by what's over here. So the first thing we want to do is change the name of this command. And the name, you'll notice this is in a few places. The name is here, and it's also the name of the file itself. And ideally, we want these all to match each other, but be something different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click the file name here, and I'm going to rename it. And what we want our module to ultimately do is calculate a better occupancy value for all of our buildings. So I'm going to change it to UMI calculate better occupancy. And I get this pop-up. And this is Visual Studio saying, hey, you renamed a file. Do you want to rename all the occurrences of that old name inside the source code itself? And I do. And what that's going to do is automatically change this and this as well to match, which is the idea. So now hopefully our command has a correct name. So let's launch Rhino 7 and see if that happened. So we open up our project. And we go to our module. And our button's still there. Let's see if the command is there. UMI calculate better occupancy. It is. And if we run it, we should see what it said before. And now let's try clicking our button. And you can see it didn't work. Unknown command, UMI example module command. It tried to run the old command. And what happened here is we renamed the command, but we didn't update the interface to call the new command. It's still trying to call the old command. So we have to update that too. Okay. So let's close this. The interface is defined using the files in the panel folder here. We won't be getting into most of these in detail in this workshop, but we can see a few of them. The two important files, most important files, are panelcontrol.xaml, XAML, which defines the actual visual interface, and panel view model, which defines the logic of the interface and specifies the code to run and the things to do when somebody interacts with the interface. We want to change the actual interaction logic. So we're going to open up the view model, and we're going to find this function called run example rhino command. And you can see all this does is it calls rhino app.run script. This is how you run a command within Rhino. And it says UMI example module command. This is what it was trying to do that's incorrect. So we need to change this to match what we did before. UMI calculate better occupancy. And then echo true just says, hey, print that to the screen so that the user knows what they were doing. So now UMI calculate better occupancy matches the actual Rhino command we made. So that button should work now. Let's test it out. And there it ran. Let me calculate better occupancy. So we have successfully modified our plugin tooltip name and our plugin's command's name. Going forward, we're going to start making more complicated modifications to our module, but these are good first steps.